Hi, Fee Hills here from Manager AI, and I'm here today for the second day of Learning in Work Week 2024 on learning power. Particular, we are very relevant at Manager AI as being the world's first mindset I nearly got that wrong. Mindset navigation platform, particularly designed to speed up, scale, and sustain mindset and behavior change in our ever expanding, in terms of speed of change, world. Now, today I'm here with Tony Dain to talk about a very important mind nudging journey. And this is on the basis of foundation of leadership, psychological safety. So on that note, I'm going to pass straight over because we only have 30 minutes. Please do ask questions if anyone's watching it live. Welcome, Tony. Good morning.
Good morning, Fee. It feels like deja vu. Here we are again, 8:45 on a weekday morning, talking mind nudging journeys. And like you say, today we are going into psychological safety. It's a big topic that I'm sure everybody is familiar with. It's not something that's appeared out of nowhere. Thank you, Amy Edmondson. I think you coined the phrase about 20 odd years ago. And I think that it's an interesting one, psychological safety, because there are lots of conversations about it. There's lots of different interpretations, and lots of organizations seem to be at very different points of the hill in terms of that journey towards psychological safety. And I think also as well, people are approaching it for slightly different reasons. So we've got an approach thinking about it from HR and looking at EDI. We've got it from a performance perspective, so organizations that are looking to high perform. We've got it from almost a well-being perspective as well. You know, we've got a challenge in terms of businesses and employees and well-being. So there's a number of reasons why people, I think, are looking at psychological safety now, even if they're looking at it through slightly different lenses. I think the key thing for me is being clear about your understanding of it and how it's going to work for your organization. What is it you're looking to do? Why are you looking to bring in psychological safety? And I think it's worth just thinking about the context we're in at the moment and have been over the last 4 or 5 years, because that certainly plays a part within all of this, whether that's the shifting and the changing kind of business landscape and that move to a more digital workplace, whether that's because of COVID and the anxiety hangover that's created for a lot of people, or whether it's simply a recognition that if we want to drive high performance, there's certain things we have to have in place. And this is where I see psychological safety. It's almost like a foundational element for a number of different things. It can be a springboard for things like inclusion. It can be a springboard for high performance. And of course, it can be a springboard for better well-being and better relationships and a better climate and culture within an organization. So I think, first of all, being clear about kind of what it is, and, you know, go and have a look at what Amy Edmondson does talk about. I mean, she talks about this notion of the fear of speaking up and making mistakes. And I think that's an element of psychological safety, but it's much more complex and multifaceted than that. It's not just about that notion of speaking up. You know, there's a lot more that goes into it, just that. You know, you could also think about Tim Clark, who's done a lot of work in this area, and he's created a framework. And actually, we tend to lean into that a little bit within our journey when we talk about that, which I will do shortly. And he looks at it across sort of four kind of elements. And then you've got a lady in the UK, Gina Bhatia, who has a lot of really great stuff around psych safety, real experts in their field. And they all kind of come at it from slightly different perspectives, but with a kind of common kind of driver. And I think this is where I kind of pick up psych safety, because for me, it sits within this place of kind of making organizations more human. It's about creating a place where people want to work, where they enjoy working. They can be themselves. They don't need to put that mask on, and they're kind of accepted for who they are. It's also a place where people can learn, they can develop, they can grow. And as we know, for our younger generations, and certainly Generation X, Generation Z, learning and growth and that continuous learning are really, really important there. So how are we doing that? How are we creating that space for people to learn, not only learn, but experiment, be able to make mistakes? And this, of course, does lean in a little bit to Amy. There's that piece that is correct, that ability to make mistakes as you go. And not only making mistakes, but you have to put your hand up and go, I don't know, or I've made a mistake. So that's the kind of culture that we're thinking about. And then we can lean into what we call contribution. So thinking much more about, how do I contribute to the bigger goal, the meaningful kind of purpose of the organization, that worthwhile work? And how does that connect things like getting feedback from my leader, understanding kind of what are my goals and aspirations for this team and how am I achieving that? And then, of course, we've got that classic, how do I challenge the status quo? How do I give feedback upwards and sideways? How do I kind of go, I'm not sure about that. Maybe there's a better way. You know, sometimes we talk about this kind of healthy conflict, that ability to challenge one another in the right way. You know, I think there's a book out, it's called Radical Candor, which talks a lot about the way that we give feedback and talk to each other in organizations. So there's a lot in that space of psych safety and a lot to really think about. Also to think about who should be thinking about leading the charge within psych safety within an organization. Is it HR? Is it frontline? Is it the CEO? I think it's a combination of those things, because psychological safety will work at a number of different levels. But at heart, it's individual. It's about how safe do I feel at work in certain contexts with certain people. And from there, you can begin to span it out. So go from individual, then maybe think about team. Because of course, we know that individuals we can work with, and we can gradually build a climate within a team. And then maybe we can then begin to take it upwards around an organizational approach to psychological safety and beyond. So again, this is where we potentially start our journey. We start with the individual and we start with the leader in terms of their thinking and behavior. How are they enabling a climate and the individuals within their team climate to feel like they're safe, to feel like they matter, to feel like they belong? How do we get those things in early? Because of course that really builds around the inclusion piece. Because of course, and this is where I kind of sometimes challenge the Amy Edmondson piece, it's about just speaking up. Because of course, to enable someone to speak up, they've also got to feel safe to be included and part of that group first of all. So again, it's that kind of the precursor to certain things. So that gives you a bit of a flavour as to kind of how I kind of see psych safety. I tend to look at it from the performance angle generally. So, you know, I work with a lot of teams and organisations that are looking to build higher, better performance. And of course, one of those building blocks to that is, of course, psychological safety. We do also look at it through that lens sometimes of well-being, because of course, there is a real challenge around well-being. And I think I've spoken before in terms of thinking about how that's an internal rather than an external thing to think about. But ultimately, psychological safety, really, when you really think about it, is all about a number of interpersonal and intrapersonal skills. It's about how we look after our thinking, our thoughts, our communication, our behavior, how we interact with other people, how we build those relationships, how we adapt and flex, how we recognize maybe some of our own inherent biases, our distortions, what we do about that, how we get better at noticing some of the assumptions and traps that we might fall into. So a lot of psychological safety really revolves around a lot of human skills. And what we know is if we get really good at that stuff and we build better relationships and we create those climates, that's when we begin to see some really interesting outcomes, not only in terms of performance and well-being and relationships, but now we begin to get a springboard into better innovation, more creativity, better collaboration. And of course, in this fast changing digital world where we've gone very kind of agile and that kind of space, we've got lots of teams coming together, project teams. coming together to work on very specific things for maybe quite short periods of time. And this is teams that maybe don't know each other from different functions and parts of the business. And so we've got to get those teams together quickly, collaborating, working effectively in harmony. So again, psychological safety can be the glue that can potentially bring these teams together quite quickly and find that common ground where people feel safe to work.
Can I just ask you a question? So really at this point, would really like to bring together the fundamental difference between this psychological safety for leaders as a journey, as a mind nudging journey, before you start explaining it, which I know you're going to, is what is the fundamental difference between taking the approach of training versus continuous sort of learning journey? In this case, it's a 12-week journey, but of course can end up being continuous in terms of different branches of psych safety, because psych safety is not, as you say, a one and done. It's the most important part of culture. So you can't get that foundation right. You're not building any culture on top of it, because it is the security, the foundation. So let's just sort of, just for a second, explore the difference between traditional training program and this sort of experiential iterative approach.
Yeah, great question, Fee. And psych safety is a brilliant example of why a journey like this is going to be much more effective than a standard development program. You know, I've seen, you know, psych safety workshops, 2 or 3 day programs, and I'm sure within that there's lots and lots of really great stuff. But as you said, Fee, psychological safety is not a one and done, as is really most development. It's a journey. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. And the idea of a journey is it works in a very different way, in that we're beginning to affect people at a mindset level over a period of time in the workplace, working with other people while they learn and grow. So it's working with the experience. So what is psychological safety like within that team at the moment? How does that individual experience as a leader psychological safety? How are they encouraging and fostering things like safety, mattering, belonging, connectedness? How are these things being fostered on a regular, daily, ongoing basis? Now, the benefit here of mind nudging and the journey is that it's micro learning over a period of days and weeks. So what this allows is a period of reflection. It allows you to pause, think about what you've noticed and observed, and then begin to reflect and begin to take actions. Now, those actions might be individual actions in terms of how I operate and come across and interact and engage people, but it might also be a number of strategies that I use, because of course psych safety, as well as being about all these human skills and the kind of the interaction and the feelings, is also needs to be supported by a process and policy and procedure. And of course all of these things take time, but this journey will look at the elements that you can build as you go. So it allows you, I think, to take on what is taking on quite a big subject in smaller bite-sized chunks, implement and start working on things, and then move on to the next stage. Now, what's really interesting about our journey, and one of the reasons why we've used Tim Clark's 4 stages as a framework, is that you can kind of build and you can scaffold that journey. So we can start with the individual leader, and we can start by thinking around inclusion and safety and mattering, and then we can layer onto that each of the next stages. But in each stage, we can look at specific skills and strategies before we move on. So that's why I think a journey is more effective than just a one-off piece of work. And of course, with our journeys, we've not only
Okay,
got
so
the journey itself, but we've also got the client's champion team inside working with us to support this journey. And of course, as you know, we have action rooms which connect into the shifts that we're looking to make. So we've got a place where we're capturing the insights, the learning in terms of some of the strategies and the tools we're going to use to continue to build safety in a space within our platform as well. So there's a number of reasons. Did that answer your question, Fee?
Yeah, absolutely. So just I'm a leader. Let's assume I'm a leader, and I'm going through this journey. Take me through this journey as if I was the individual leader a second. I know obviously it's in cohorts, but just as an experience, what am I going to go through?
Okay, so you're going to start the journey with an orientation, what I call the onboarding session, which is really 90 minutes, and that's going to set you up for success for the journey. So that's a combination of introducing you to the journey, how it's going to work. So, you know, that combination of mind nudging, pop-up, shared thinking pods, resource library, one-to-one coaching. We'll walk you through the platform so you can see how the platform works. You'll be able to see where you get your mind nudges, where they appear, where you put your insights in. You'll be able to use the emotional health tracker so you can track your emotional health through the journey. You'll be able to see basically how everything works. And then we'll start you on that journey by introducing you to kind of the why of psych safety and our first pop-up on that journey, just to get things kicking off. Once you've done that, you've got a weekend gap. So we normally run our orientations on a Friday at the end of a week. And then we start our mind nudging journey the following week. And that works on a 3 mind nudge base per week. So you get a mind nudge on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. And each week we have a theme. So for our psych safety journey, and because we've lent into the 4 pillars, if you like, of the Tim Clark framework, we've got 3 weeks on each element. So the first 3 weeks, get my maths right here. The first 3 weeks, we're going to go through inclusion. So we call it inclusion safety. And we're going to look at that through you as a leader and then you as a team. And we're going to have a number of elements that build up as you go through those 3 weeks. And then as you get to the end of that week, into that 3-week period, we kind of wrap that period up before we move into the next part of the journey and the next stage. Okay, and that repeats across the 12 weeks. What I'll do is I'll take you into an individual week to give you a little bit of a flavour as to kind of what's involved and what that's like.
Take me into Outcast. Start at the beginning. Sorry, there is a there's a delay on this StreamYard. Yeah, there's a delay, Tony. Sorry, it's a delay on the technology here. I'm not sure why. Take us into Outcast as a theme, because that's, you know, it's step 1, week 1. Why is that week 1, and what happens in Outcast?
Oh, okay. So Outcast is a very interesting week because we're looking at what it feels like to be excluded. So we're almost kind of starting with the contrast. We're not thinking about what it's like to be included. We're flipping that on its head to go, what is it like to feel like an outcast? And as a leader that week, you're going to be noticing and reflecting on how you believe your people, whether you feel they are more of an outcast or whether you feel they're more included. So you're going to have to observe whether that's in meetings, one-to-ones, team interactions. You're going to spend a good proportion of that week observing your team and determining what level of inclusivity you feel they're experiencing. And there's a great pop-up that sits within that around this notion of whether I'm outcasted or whether I'm included. So we look at that kind of piece first of all. So we get that, you know, am I on the inside or am I on the outside? So that's where we start. And that's the theme for that week. And then there's a number of, what's the word I'm looking for? mind nudges. So you got your 3 mind nudges. So that first one that week will be asking you to observe when you notice and experience someone who feels like they're being outcasted. You might also self-reflect, because of course, as a leader, it's quite possible, especially if we're one of those new and emerging leaders coming into role, we might maybe feel a little bit outcasted. We might not necessarily feel fully included and inclusive at that stage. So we can have a little look at that. We then begin to move into week 2, which is what we call the tripod of motivation. And I touched on earlier this, where we talk about it's really all around safety, mattering, and belonging. So again, as a leader, you're going to be asked to look at and consider your individual team, so your direct team, and how safe do you think they feel? How much do you feel like they matter, and how much do you feel like they belong? So again, very much around this frame of inclusion. We almost see this as a little bit of a foundational piece for psych safety, in terms of getting people to feel like they're a part of, they're included, they're accepted, they're acknowledged for who they are, regardless of those differences. Because of course, and I could have mentioned this earlier, one of the challenges now in business is that we've got multi-generational teams, so 4 different generations. We've got a more diverse employee and customer base right across the board, especially if we're working more globally as well as locally. And of course, all of these different people come with all different, their values, their needs, their wants, their expectations, their beliefs. And yet as a leader, I've got to knit all of that together, and I've got to help everybody, no matter who you are and where you come from. I've got to help you feel safe and connected to the larger group and create that. So that's why that first 3 weeks really focuses on how am I as a leader really doing that. Does that answer your question a little bit there, Fee?
Can I just interrupt? Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I'm moving on, mindful of time. We've got 8 minutes left, 7.5 minutes left. So a couple of key questions here is, how long am I going to spend on this per week? Yeah. Also, what outcomes can a leader expect going through this journey within the 12 weeks? I will just move over to the next slide here, because then we can see that the journey goes on. So there's 2 times 6 weeks, so hence 12 weeks. We're brilliant at maths. And whilst we may not have time to explain the entire journey, we can send you information. So definitely DM Tony or myself here on LinkedIn. So that's Tony Dain or myself, Fee Hills. But Tony, just speak to the actual outcome and time and input that's required from the participant and how it works in a cohort, if you don't mind.
Okay, so let's do time first of all. So you're looking at, I think, with your 3 mind nudges each week, you're looking at between 30 to 45 minutes a week, I think, spending on just reflecting, observing, taking note of your actions, etc. That's probably an average, I would say. Some people will naturally spend more. Some people might spend a little bit less. You've then got the shared thinking pod. And again, this will be really variable. Some cohorts that have got a lot of stuff going on, lots of interaction, you may find your teams are in there more time than not. For others, it might be a bit less, but I would say on average, people are popping in probably end of week into their shared thinking pods. You're probably maybe talking 15 minutes a week, something like that. So you're probably talking about an hour a week over the 12 weeks, so about 12 hours there. And then you're talking your pop-up sessions. We've got, I think, 4 mandatory pop-ups. We also sometimes do additional pop-ups along the journey, but those pop-ups are between 30 to 60 minutes. So you're talking probably about 2 to 3 hours worth there. I think you're looking at, in terms of total learning time across the 12-week journey, I think you're probably looking at about 15 hours, somewhere at 15 to 20 hours, somewhere in that region. Does that answer your question?
But of course, a lot of that time, and I think that's worth noting about the time input, because obviously what I'm really aware about, and I know you are, is the lack of time that people have. So a lot of the mind nudging is on the go. So whilst it's saying takes this much time, effectively it's priming your mind as you're doing your normal daily work. So there might be the odd 10 minutes here and there that sit down and get a cup of coffee type thing. But to all intensive purposes, most of the audio vibes, for example, are like 3-4 minutes in the morning with the coffee or whatever refreshment you have. And I think this is really, really important because time is of the essence and people are overwhelmed. Of course, with this, by the way, I just want to note here that there is no administration whatsoever. So there's no sit down and really apply to something other than the pop-ups, which is experiential anyway. So that's quite important. So just talk about the outcomes when we're here about this particular journey. So psychological safety, the whole 12-week journey.
Yeah. So in terms of outcomes, what we're looking for are shifts in thinking and behaviour and adapting new skills and strategies. So what we tend to find, and certainly doing this work with leaders, you tend to get quite quick shifts in thinking. And certainly using this mind nudging approach where it's micro learning, working on the unconscious. Remember, we're leaning into epic, you know, regardless of the journey, the kind of the principles and the method underneath it doesn't really change. So we can expect to see quite quick shifts in thinking and behavior. We can see reasonably quick adoption in skills and strategies because, of course, again, this is the benefit of having micro learning, spacing and being able to reflect. So, you know, one of the challenges with standard development programs sometimes is we don't create the spacing and we don't get the time to reflect and then put into place. So this is really, really good in that way. In terms of psych safety as outcomes for your overall journey, then what you're looking at are some of the bigger picture outcomes. So much more self-aware and socially and emotionally aware leaders, much more aware of the concept of psych safety and their role within that, much more conscious of the importance of things like communication, inter and intrapersonal communication, empathy, human skills, giving and receiving feedback, you know, seeing different perspectives. You know, you're going to get a lot of new skills and tools that come out of this journey, as well as awareness around the topic of safety, psych safety, and what are the principles and some of the strategies that you can put in place to do that. So there's some big outcomes off the back of this 12-week journey. But you know, fundamentally, it's going to provide a foundation for your new and emerging leaders to go, I now get psych safety. I recognize that me as an individual, how I role model that and create the climate for my team is really, really important. I'm going to recognize that psych safety starts with the individual and at a team level. And I'm going to recognize that there are a number of stages that I can go through to create psychological safety. And I'm going to have a number of different tools at my disposal to help me build and create that psychologically safe climate for my team. Am I going to be a wizard in psychological safety after 12 weeks? No, of course. No, I'm not. But I'm going to have a really good foundation and an understanding for how I can build it for my team. That's where we're going to get you at the end of the 12 weeks. You're going to be in a really great position to do that. Sorry
to interrupt. We've got this delay and it's really causing me like, sorry. So it sounds like I'm interrupting. What I think what's important about this whole journey and the difference between, and this is why learning in work week 2024 is really expressing the learning power of continuous learning, creating that learning power. It is almost the only way to go experiential, micro learning, and iterative in terms of a process, but also blended. So let's not forget, if we don't blend that between the pop-ups or the interventions in different ways, the introspection and the experiential and the social learning, then we don't get the result. And that's true. But I think, just to reiterate what you're saying, I think what I'm interpreting that as in a few words is practical skills that they can go and foster a psychology or start to foster a psychologically safe team or workplace environment. And really that this is about habit development much more than it is about information. So it's much more about transformation, more than going on these journeys is much more transformative than being like, here's some information, here's some models that you can't necessarily execute on. And I think that is the huge gap. Oh, we're out of time.
Yeah.
Look at us. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah, is that in a nutshell? Would you agree with that?
yeah, it's an experiential journey. You know, a lot of your experience comes from when you're in work doing what you're doing, and like you say, Fee, then we bring it back out of that, get into some pop-ups, come together as a group, share our ideas and strategies, our successes and challenges. And this is why Mind Nudger is a brilliant platform, because it offers the complete 70-20-10 ecosphere. So you can do all of this in one platform, make it really easy, get the spacing, get the content, get the experience, and you can make it work brilliantly. And the great news is, for until the 31st of May, as part of Learning at Work Week, we're doing this like our other journeys. You can access this journey for your new and emerging leaders at 50% off. 50% off for 12 weeks. I think it works out roughly at about £350 a head per leader. So I mean, you're talking a really good value for what is really quite a transformational journey. So if you're really interested in exploring psych safety, you want to get some really good foundations, then jump on board, find out more, and we'll be only too happy to help.
Okay, as Tony said, I'm going to wrap up now because I'm mindful of people's time. And thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Tony. Excuse the technical delay going on here. I'm not sure why it's happening. But thank you very, very much. And do DM us or get in touch or go to the website at mynudger.com for any more information and to get in touch. Thank you. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.